Hey folks, welcome to this first lesson of this course on Java Web Services for beginners, in which I am going to introduce you to web services and its benefits. I will also talk here about the different kinds of web services. At a conceptual level, a service is a software component that is available over the network to process and service requests for other software applications. Web service is a client-server application that communicates over network protocols like HTTP. The application that sends the request is called as the consumer or web service client, and the web service is referred to as a provider. The service consumer and provider use standard messages to exchange information. These messages are agnostic or independent of the programming language of the consumer and provider applications, and created using standard formats like XML, which implies that the applications involved can be from any programming language, which provides true interoperability, as you can see in the diagram as well. If you don't know XML already, don't worry, I will cover that as well in one of the sections of this course. A good example of a web service can be, for example, a vehicle check application. For this example, let us assume it is coded in Java and it returns all vehicle details for the provided vehicle registration number. And different client applications written in any programming language like ASP.NET or C# or PHP can send vehicle registration number to this vehicle check web service. And this web service will process the request and return back the details of the vehicle for which the registration number was sent by the client. One of the characteristics of a true web service is that it is created in a way that there is loose coupling between consumer and web service. We have loosely coupled applications when changing one of them does not warrant a change in the other. For example, in a real-world example, tires are loosely coupled to the car. We can easily change the tires without making changes to the car itself. Similarly, in the vehicle check service example, if there are any changes to the way vehicle checks need to be done in future, then only making changes to the web service should be enough, and consuming applications should not need to make any changes in their code. Now let me quickly clear up the difference between web services and SOA. You might have come across this term SOA, which is an abbreviation for Services Oriented Architecture, and some of you might have wondered the difference between a web service and a SOA. So SOA, or Services Oriented Architecture, is an architectural pattern that makes possible for web services to interact with one another independently. So it is in other words, an orchestration of different web services, whereas web service is a realization of SOA concept that leverages technologies like XML or JSON, etc., and common internet protocols such as HTTP. Let us try to understand, why do we really need web services when we can still create great applications without them? There are many benefits using web services, and so many organizations are re-architecting their existing monolithic applications in silos to carve out web services from them. Firstly, web services enhance the reusability immensely. They are used to create self-sustained, reusable components like currency conversion, weather reports, language translation as services. Next, web services help to solve interoperability problem. With web services, you can exchange data between different applications running over different technologies and platforms. For example, a web service can be developed in Java running on a Linux platform, whereas it can be consumed by application developed using .NET technologies running over a Windows environment. And then they also help in seamless integration of applications. Suppose we are a provider of a service, say, for example, a weather forecast service, and we make weather data available for other applications. Then, what is the need or why to make that information available in the form of a web page and then make developers of other applications who need that data to visit our website, scrap our page, and then extract the data that they need? Will it not be easier to develop a web service to which a developer can pass in a date and get back a well-defined XML document containing all the info they need? So this might help you appreciate the real need of a web service. Then another advantage of web service is that the web services can collaborate in a loosely coupled way to achieve complex operations. Programs providing simple services can interact with each other to deliver sophisticated added value services. This is a huge advantage for a business, as you might imagine. Now let us understand the two kinds of web services which can be distinguished as big web services and RESTful web services. At this point, I will talk about conceptual details, but later I will take you through actual implementation and create both the big and RESTful web services. Big web services use XML messages that follow the XML RPC or Simple Object Access Protocol standard. These are primarily XML language defining a message architecture and message formats. In other words, services based on XML protocols, XML RPC and SOAP. For those of you who are not familiar with RPC, it stands for Remote Procedural Calls. In legacy programming languages, methods were referred to as procedures, and that is why this name, to invoke remote or not local procedures. We will cover details of these XML protocols in later section. Now coming on to RESTful web services. REST is an architectural style which is based on web standards and the HTTP protocol. Because REST is based on HTTP as the communication protocol, which is stateless client-server protocol, the REST style also follows stateless client-server architecture. In REST-based architecture, everything is a resource. These resources can be text files, HTML pages, images, or dynamic business data, which in more technical terms can be said as that REST allows resources to have different representations. Example, text, XML, JSON, etc., which also means that REST supports MIME types like XML, text, JSON, and user-defined. For those of you who are not familiar with what is MIME type, it is nothing but a way to tell about the type of data that file holds, so that the software handling the file uses appropriate handling, just like if Windows identifies if it is a PDF file to open with Acrobat Reader. Every resource should support the common operations of HTTP protocol. REST server simply provides access to resources and REST client accesses and modifies the resource. Here each resource is identified by URIs. So to help you understand what is URI, I'm pretty sure you all would already be knowing what URL means. a very common example of which is http www.google.com. So URI, if simply explained, is a superset of URL. So all URLs are URIs, and additionally, if we remove HTTP from the URL and have only google.com, it would also be a URI. In layman terms, if we have the name and address of a person, then name alone is also a URI, and name with the address, which would now become a URL, is also a URI. I would now conclude this lecture and hope this lecture would have helped you develop some high-level picture of a web service and appreciate the need for a web service, and also understand at a high level different types of web services, which are big web services and RESTful web services. I'll obviously take you through these different web services in depth in later lectures. So folks, bye for now and see you in the next lesson.